All right, guys, if I'm a little red in the face, I apologize, but that's because I've just come off the track in the 2025 Volkswagen Golf R. Yes, it's about as much fun as you could probably expect, but I do want to take things just a short step further back and talk about this car, more exactly my feelings about this car. A bit of a hot take, but I've never loved it. Now, don't get me wrong, I've respected it. It is good, but I've always maintained that the Golf R, it's just a bit too predictable, a little too soft, the steering's a little too light. I just don't love it. If I were to buy a sport compact car, this would not be it. Quite honestly, I would probably lean towards its GTI sibling. That is still sort of the case, but something happened here even before I got on the track. Some of it has to do with the updates for 2025, but some of it is just about the car itself. Some updates from a few years ago, the Mark 8, when it was introduced, well, Volkswagen added a Nurburgring mode, and yeah, that might seem a little hokey to add this kind of namesake setting when it's already got sport and track settings, but this really changes the car altogether. So when I was out cruising around on these winding back roads, having it in sport mode, yeah, I was having a good time, but I wasn't in love with it. And then I kind of toggled it over into Nurburgring mode, and everything changed about the car and the way I felt about it. Now, before any of you Golf R diehards come after me to tear my head off for what I said, again, it is a good car, and I understand it's a great daily driver, but I just didn't think it had that kind of knife's edge attitude. To me, a sports car of any kind, but especially a little car like this, it should kind of scare you a little bit when you want it to, and that was never really the case for me with the Golf R. And even in that Nürburgring setting, yes, it is still somewhat predictable, but it just turns on this live wire personality that I absolutely love, whether you're on the road or on the racetrack. So let's talk about some of the changes here and some of the stuff that hasn't changed. One of the big ones that drives me absolutely nuts, Volkswagen still has this stupid haptic steering wheel in the Golf R. The GTI, it has a new old steering wheel because it has physical buttons. Volkswagen listened to the chorus of boos and swapped that one out. This one is still the same, and apparently it's because of this R button here on the steering wheel, and that's how you choose between your different drive modes. But I'm telling you right now, you can do that with this button down here below the new touchscreen or through the touchscreen itself. So committing to this terrible steering wheel just so you have this button by your thumb doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I would much rather see the same steering wheel as in the GTI put in this Golf R. A minor gripe, I know, but it's annoying because you can still, I don't know, change songs or stations, adjust the volume, or even turn on the heated steering wheel, especially when you were on the racetrack. And yes, that did happen to me today at Summit Point. Very irritating, but I will give Volkswagen credit for finally coming to its senses and adding some backlighting to these sliders here for the volume and temperature control just below this new touchscreen. The screen itself, it's good. I will say it didn't really need this entire makeover, although I'm happy it's here. The big one is the backlighting for these sliders, because at night before, you couldn't see them, and that was a huge issue. So I'm happy that Volkswagen addressed that, but it should have done the same with these controls on the steering wheel. Okay, now for the elephant in the room, and that's the fact that there is no more manual transmission offered in the Golf R or the GTI in North America. We were really holding out with the Golf R, but last year was the end for both of them. I am disappointed. I know a lot of you out there are too, but I'm telling you, especially on the track, there was never a moment that I missed it. I was so focused on what I was doing on the track itself that I really enjoyed not only what the computer could do, but being able to use these paddle shifters on the steering wheel that are super responsive. It is excellent, and in that Nürburgring mode, you can bang this thing right off the rev limiter. That is a very cool feature, because I don't know, if you're going through a couple second gear corners and you don't want to have to upshift, well, it's nice that you can run it all the way up to the limiter and not have any issues. It is a very cool feature. This thing also has some upgrades that I want to talk about, starting with these seats. Now, these are actually the base seats in Europe, but they are an upgrade here in North America. That doesn't bother me in the least because they look cool and they are extremely comfortable. Now, in the States, you have to get them as part of a package with the Akrapovic or Akrapovic. Some people pronounce it differently, but anyways, this upgraded exhaust that we finally get, that's been available in Europe for a little while now, you have to get them as a pair in the US, but in Canada, we can get them individually as standalone options, and I really do appreciate that, because if you don't want both, if for whatever reason you don't want the exhaust but you want these seats, well, you don't have to pay for both of them if you don't want to. I will say the exhaust does sound good, although I wish it was just a little louder. Yes, even in Nurburgring mode, it's just not quite doing it for me. And I know that some people don't like a noisy car, and you can add an aftermarket exhaust if you would rather do it, but I like this kind of warranted approach to things. You can buy this from the factory. The cool thing about this car is you can track it from the factory. Really, aside from tires, there's nothing that you absolutely need to do to this car to turn it into a weekend warrior, which has always been the appeal of the Golf R and other sport compacts like it. So the fact that you can get this exhaust system right from Volkswagen and have this kind of upgraded vehicle that sounds better, it's a lighter system overall, it is a very cool feature to have. But I understand that for some people, it might be one of those things where you don't necessarily love it, or you want a louder system, and this will not do the trick. Although it does sound good, especially if you switch it over into Nurburgring mode and just listen to the burbles and pops as you let off the throttle. Now, I do want to talk about the GTI as well, so I want to get to the last touch here, and that is the updated fascia, yeah, but more importantly, there's a little bit more power. This thing now makes 328 horsepower to go with 295 pound-feet of torque. And again, in Nürburgring mode, you can feel every single one of those ponies pulling as you drop the hammer and go. All right, I've switched into the 2025 Volkswagen Golf GTI, a car that I probably miss the manual transmission more in because it's more of a street performer. Now, yes, you can bring this thing to the track. There's nothing wrong with that, but really this is sort of your back road cruiser as well as your daily driver. And I just wish this one still had the 6-speed. It's got the same 7-speed dual clutch automatic as the Golf R, although of course the ratios are different to account for the fact that this is front wheel drive and that is all wheel drive, as well as the difference in output between the two of them. This one makes 241 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque, and that is the same as last year. No updates like you get with the Golf R, but it doesn't really need more output. And to be honest with you guys, that would be a bit of a problem, because if you take a look at the numbers, yes, horsepower is way up, but torque is the number that really matters. And this creeps awfully close to the Golf R, 273 pound-feet of torque, all of it going to the front wheels. That is a whole bunch. Now, I do want to talk about some minor differences. Yes, the Golf R has a bigger turbo than the GTI, but this one has more boost pressure than the Golf R, which is just an interesting note, if nothing else. There are a few differences. I talked about the different gear ratios. This also has a higher compression ratio than the 2-liter under the hood of the Golf R. But again, I do miss the manual transmission more so here. I also gotta say, realistically, if you are shopping for a car this size that's fun to drive, but it's also practical, both of them will do the trick. But if you do not plan to really kind of put yourself in a situation where you might go to the track, or even, I don't know, some road trips out to something like the Tail of the Dragon, I would probably stick with the GTI. It's also significantly cheaper. So let's talk about pricing. Now, the base version is about $38,500 before tax in Canada. And then if you want the Autobahn trim, that's the next step up, the only other trim available, well, that's about $42,500, which is quite a bit less than the Golf R. Yes, you are getting more car, but there is a significant price gap between them. because it's $53,000 to start in Canada, and that's about $2,600 more if you want the black edition. And then, like I talked about, the seats and the exhaust, those are upgrades that you have to pay for above and beyond that. So again, something to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is if you do want to tune either of them, yes, there is all sorts of aftermarket support, but I would probably pick the GTI for that too, because you can make more of an impact on the character of the car by hitting up the aftermarket as opposed to the Golf R that's already so much more expensive. If you save that money for your upgrades, you are going to see a bigger return in the GTI. Of course, that is just my opinion, but I really do think the potential is just that much higher. It's going to cost you more to start with the Golf R, and then the upgrades are going to be even more expensive to make a difference. And I really don't think it needs it. Whereas this one, yeah, it would be cool to, I don't know, get some stickier tires, maybe some bigger brakes, intake exhaust, the usual stuff, maybe even chip the motor if you want just a little bit more output. But I like the fact that this is still a tuner car. This is still made to do that sort of stuff. And that is why I still absolutely adore the Volkswagen Golf GTI after all these years. Yes, I miss the manual transmission. Yes, I wish it had more steering feel, but really it's just a great car. And even all these generations later, it's still one I absolutely love to drive.